Welcome to the R2RB podcast series where we interview local musicians and get to know them on a more personal basis. I'm Deb LaMotta, your host for R2RB podcast series. This podcast is about the local musician's journey, their influences, their creative process, and so much more. We'll also highlight their music and let you know where they will be playing their next gig. So sit back, relax, and enjoy R2RB podcast series. And I'd like to welcome my guest, James West of James West Acoustic. James is a local musician here in Delaware and is an awesome vocalist and guitarist. James, welcome, and how's it going?
Hi, Deb. Thank you for having me. It's going great. We kind of discussed earlier. Personally, things are kind of hot at my house right now because of AC. So I hope everyone else is, no one else is having any AC troubles as they're listening to this. But other than that, doing great.
Great. Yeah, we've been having some hot, humid weather, and not having AC just really isn't the way to go. So I hope you get it fixed soon. So tell me, who is James West?
Well, I'm a musician in the Delaware area. I do covers of really just about anything. I love to play all sorts of music. I mainly do a lot of classic rock and country. I'm a big 90s kid. That's kind of the era I grew up in. And that can be anything from like the rock and grunge stuff, even to like some 90s R&B, which is guilty pleasure of mine, but there was some just amazing music from that era. Really, I can't think of too much from the 90s that I didn't like. So I try to fit those in, and even like some more modern stuff too, especially when it comes to the country, as far as what I play there on that end.
I'm a country girl. I like the country music, but I also like everything else. But if you play the country, I'm with you. So how and when did you get into the music business? Has it always been a passion, the music, from when you were young?
It has. Originally wanted to be a drummer, as I think all kids do. Every kid kind of dreams of being able to kind of just make a ton of noise and, bang on the drums. My elementary school band had openings and stuff. So basically when I was in fourth grade, it was the first time, in my schooling where there was kind of something available musically. And what ended up happening is for fourth and fifth grade, so 2 years in a row there, I went to the band teacher at the very beginning of the school year. I was like, dude, can I play drums? And in both years, he was like, every kid wants to play drums. We have enough drummers. No, play something else. It went from saxophone to, which didn't really work out for me well, to trumpet. Again, not a great fit. By the time I got to middle school, I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to do it all on my own. I asked my mother to buy me a bass because I didn't know any bass guitarists. And I thought it was a really cool instrument. This was this was probably 99 or maybe late 98, something like that. It was kind of before they started putting together those starter kits for bass, so you still had to buy everything a la carte, whereas they did have starter kits for guitar that were a lot cheaper. So ended up being, if you remember Ames, you remember those stores?
I do.
They had no business selling musical instruments.
True.
My mom got me some no-name kit that I had asked for because it was the cheapest I could find, and this was pre-internet or at least me having access to internet and stuff. Right. So I just kind of kept my eyes open anytime we went somewhere, or if I saw flyers in the mail. So I remember it was $1.29, and it came with little guitar, amp, gig bag, cable, all the things. The amp broke after the first week.
Oh no.
Yeah, and but I played the hell out of that damn guitar. I still have it downstairs, for sentimental value. Yeah, it's down in my basement.
That's cool.
But yeah, I learned how to play on it, and played it for probably longer than I should have, considering that it was not even up to the right scale length and stuff like that. But after that, I was just kind of that was it. I dug dug myself in, and I was like, I'm a guitarist now, and just kind of went that route. The singing thing kind of came later.
Did you teach yourself? You were self-taught?
I did. Yeah. I am self-taught. And we weren't we were kind of poor growing up. Another reason why the cheapest kit possible was the one that ended up happening, and really lessons and really just weren't in the budget. So I ended up learning via Guitar World, $5 a month versus like I think $25 a week or something was definitely was more manageable for us. I ended up having somebody, I have an older sister, and one of her friends showed me how to read tablature, which for anyone who may not be familiar with tablature, instead of having the normal like staff that you would for like reading sheet music,
right,
it gives you a line for each string of your guitar, and then gives you numbers corresponding to the fret that you play, and then you kind of see where your fingers are supposed to be, and you kind of teach yourself how to play rhythmically by ear from there. And just I would get Guitar World magazine from the grocery store like every month, and it would have songs that I was like listening to or whatever on the radio anyway, and I would
you
teach
just picked
myself
it
how
up.
to play them.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so did you play in a band, or were you always solo?
No, I this is actually my first endeavor into being solo. And mind you, I've been doing it for like 2 years now, but I was always in bands before that. Okay. I grew up playing a lot more along the rock and heavy metal side of things.
Okay.
So like the first few bands I was in were definitely kind of like, I don't know, that mid 2000s, like post grunge kind of deal, where we would kind of fit in with like Shinedown's early stuff, I guess.
Right.
Went up like meeting some more musicians who were also into like the stuff that was a bit heavier and whatnot. And at that time, that's when I kind of made the transition to being a singer as well. I had known how to sing. I was just always afraid to. I still to this day suffer from pretty big stage fright, which I know sounds kind of hypocritical considering that I'm up there alone, but I've been able to kind of work some different various ways in order to be able to do it. So it was around a point where I was like about 20, maybe 21 when I, started like actually wanting to like sing for like bands I was trying to do or actually actively doing. Right. Because anyone who is a musician will tell you, will be able to kind of be able to tell you you have way more bands you're in that never actually play a show and never really even have like a full lineup than you do bands that actually do something. Right. And that was most of my earlier days was, we would have a band, we'd do a few practices. I'd write a song or two, someone else would write a song or two, barely learn them, barely practice them, break up a few months later, never do anything, there was that kind of thing. So really for me, like I kind of got a pretty late start in it comparative to like some other kids I went to like high school with and stuff. And before we recorded, you would kind of made mention about like Delaware having like a big scene. Like Delaware had a huge scene for heavier music, so for like metal, hardcore, and maybe not as heavy, but like there was a big pop punk movement here in Delaware as well. Tons of bands. There was a place called the Harmony Grange. I was in high school wanting to play metal and go play at like the Harmony Grange. And then I knew kids that were like in pop punk bands or whatever that were playing there while in high school and stuff. Right. So again, kind of a late start for me on that end. But by the time I was in my 20s, I finally, met some like drummers were always kind of the hardest thing to come by. I met some drummers, ended up doing some bands. The first metal band that I did, I was not the singer. And then it wasn't until like the second band I did, I wound up like finally having the courage to do it. Right. And feeling confident enough in myself to be able to do it.
And so that at what point then did you go solo?
That was just 2 years ago. So like I had spent years playing metal and then set it down for about a good 5 years or so. So around 2015, I stopped doing metal due to my career. In 2020, when we were kind of all supposed to be not going places and doing things during the pandemic, my old drummer from the last metal band I was in, he had contacted me and needed a rhythm guitarist for his cover band. He had been playing music during my like 5-year hiatus, and so he needed a rhythm guitarist. He knew I absolutely could cover it. I'm not much of a lead guitar player, but like rhythms, and that's the bread and butter of what I do now. It's just all rhythms. Right. So I joined up. It was at a time period in life where I was like also like in the right frame of mind to do it and whatnot. One of the things about being metal or growing up in metal is like I was kind of an elitist to metal. If it wasn't like, I liked other genres of music, but I wouldn't really talk about it. Guilty pleasures. So if it wasn't metal, it wasn't awesome.
That's right.
And so it was one of those things where like I never thought that like in my mid-30s I'd be playing like covers and stuff. And the things we think when we're young that are completely wrong.
Yeah, I know that one.
Yeah, because it's a ton of fun. But yeah, I ended up around November of 2021. I kind of thought about the idea of doing some solo gigs as kind of like a side thing to the band, and then it wound up being just one of those things where it's like, this is a lot easier. I can learn any song I want to learn, and there you go. Quickly. I don't have to like
get everybody together, get everybody on the same page, get everybody on the same notes.
Exactly. Yeah. And so there's pros and cons to everything. Obviously, there's pros and cons to being in a band.
Right.
All of us musicians have kind of, there's obviously the cliche that we all have an ego.
Right.
And that can be true from time to time.
Of course.
So you don't really have to deal with that when you're not in a band. And, again, especially on the idea of like doing covers, if someone asks for a song and it's something I'm familiar with, but I just don't know how to like play yet, I can like learn it on a break or whatever.
Yes.
There's a lot of conveniences. I'm the only one that's worried about my scheduling. I don't have to worry about like, necessarily. So there's some cool things there. I do miss having drums though. I miss having that backbeat. So, there's absolutely, like I said, there's pros and cons.
And you just mentioned you're pretty much your own booking manager, your own social media marketer. And so how did you learn to do all those needed functions? Did you do it, with the bands and everything, or being the solo artist that you are now, you had to do it?
Definitely the prior on that one. The learning gap was like the difference between like what I used to do to promote on the side of like doing metal versus doing covers. Because the way of like talking to the audience, the way to talking to people via social media even is definitely very starkly different. When I was doing metal, I also did a lot of like booking for not only the bands I was in, but there was a period of time where I was booking other bands, and I'd be booking shows that I didn't even play on. And it was just one of those things that a lot of those things end up just being kind of natural progressions from time to time.
Sure.
You wind up playing at a venue a few times, you kind of start talking to the owners, you earn a rapport, and from that rapport, you build upon those, on those relationships to where you can start kind of like booking things. A big difference that winds up coming on that end is when you're playing like original music,
right?
It is more. It's a different type of. I guess expectation from the venue, because a lot of times you end up like playing for like a door money kind of deal versus when you do covers, it's more, you're kind of a hired entertainment to the venue. When I was doing like original music, like, it was all on you specifically to bring everyone. And that isn't something that necessarily, like, obviously with doing covers, you want to bring people out. But there also is that kind of that element of like being there to sing and entertain, the people that are already there, the regular patrons. A lot of the venues that do original music, or at least did metal, and allowed metal to be played there as original music, a lot of them, either they didn't have like regulars necessarily in the sense that like, there might be like 2 or 3 people that are there like almost every night, but like outside of that, the crowd varied every time, depending on whatever was playing at the venue. So it really was a big thing where it's like, just like you had to spam people. I know the back in like the MySpace and like early Facebook days, I'm sure that plenty of friends kind of like silently blocked me, or like, so that I couldn't like keep just spamming, trying to get people to come out to shows.
Right.
It was just one of those things where like from that history of being such a shameless self-promoter, trying to just really kind of beg people to come out and hear these songs that me and, 3 or 4 other dudes wrote,
Absolutely.
Going into like the covers thing, I was able to, just kind of evolve some of that. And like I said, the gap really was learning how to talk to people, which admittedly, my biggest, I guess, weakness is that like still at times kind of knowing what to say in between songs when I'm on stage.
Right.
Back in like, the metal days, I would just, I would just make kind of like a rude joke, and off the top of my head. And like metalheads, we were kind of all into it, and so everyone would just laugh, and that's not really how it works with like if I'm playing at at like your local watering hole, I'm not going to insult anybody.
No, you gotta read your room. You gotta read
exactly.
that audience.
Exactly. And I know well enough about, I know well enough going into it that's definitely not the case, but like, trying to find essentially kind of like where, that level of, and like you said, reading the room and, kind of figuring out how,
absolutely,
how an audience wants to, kind of be addressed and, so on and so forth. Because sometimes, you'll have like a smaller place, a little more intimate, and you're kind of talking more directly to like specific certain people that are kind of buying in and looking you straight in the eye, and then other times you play like a bigger room, and you are just more kind of talking in a more broadcast manner.
Yeah, the dynamics change. Absolutely. Do you try to book all your gigs all at once? Do you have a certain time period, a downtime during the winter or whatever it might be, where you try to get everything booked? Because I know you have your events page that you are pretty well booked right through September.
So I would say that I do probably about 90% of my own booking. 2021, 2022, I went through those years doing all of my own, but probably around like February or March or so of this year, I did start working with Dana over at TM Entertainment.
Okay.
On some shows, and he's been absolutely fantastic. I tell him my dates of availability. He never tries to kind of pitch me shows that are on days that I don't want to play, because I do very much try not to play certain days of the week, because those are days where like I have my son and I don't want to necessarily be off playing shows when I could be hanging out with him.
Absolutely. And a quick question: Do you work a full-time gig besides your music?
I do, yeah. I have a full-time, a 40-hour week. I have a normal everyday job. So this is my side hustle. I'm not a full-time musician. I do know some dudes in the area that do this full-time, and they're just out there hustling. They're playing every day, sometimes twice a day. And I don't know how they do it. I have all the respect in the world for them, for especially being able to do like double headers.
You do all cover songs, as you were talking about. And for those for those who might not know what that is, why don't you tell us?
I don't play any like original music out, at least. I do occasionally write some at home. So it's playing other people's songs. And really that can, a lot of times go from trying to play as closely to the recording as you possibly can, to make yourself try to like sound exactly like it, all the way to kind of reimagining songs, and taking extreme liberties with them, and kind of finding what happens. I had made mention earlier that like I have a deep love for like 90s R&B. Not a lot of it involves guitar. So like anytime that I've kind of figured out how to like perform a song that's 90s R&B, it is very much, that would be an example of me taking a lot of liberties with the way the song sounds, and kind of moving the vocal line from like the backing beat that is on like the original recording, and like singing those lines over a guitar part that wasn't necessarily there before, and then there's other songs where I'm just kind of straight playing it exactly how it is on the record. The only difference there would be the fact that it's one singular acoustic guitar versus, say, like a whole band behind my voice.
Right. Do you have a favorite song that you sing?
Oof. I have a few. It really all depends on like the genre.
Okay. Well, I gotta ask you, what's your favorite country?
My favorite right now, I want to say I'm really big on like the Luke Combs' cover of Fast Car. It can, there's so many lyrics, it can be kind of hard to remember all of it, and because even from the '90s version by Tracy Chapman, which is,
oh my gosh, I know,
he didn't change any of the words. But
when I heard that song first come on the radio, I was like, what? Let me turn that up.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm a '90s kid, so like anytime someone covers something from the '90s, it's usually going to be just,
oh my God, I love it. Yeah.
And Luke Combs, when it comes down to country, at least like male country singers, I mean, I don't know if it's him or Zach Brown that I would say would either one of the two are I love their voices. I could see Luke Combs like covering, taking like an Alice in Chains song and covering it in like a country style, and I think would be fantastic.
Oh my God. Absolutely. Well, let me ask you this. We'll go right from there. So, if you could be on stage with your favorite singer musician, who would that be?
I would have to say, I mean, if it weren't Lane Staley, I would have to say Chris Cornell. Absolutely, Chris Cornell. Soundgarden was, at least in my opinion, the best of the best of the best of the best when it came to like the '90s bands, let alone the big four grunge bands. I mean, they kind of on the same line as far as like hard rock version of like the Beatles, so to say, because they were like four individual songwriters, kind of the way the Beatles, did things, and they would all kind of bring in their stuff and like, then amalgamate it and turn out a sound. I guess that's really the only comparison to the Beatles. So, but still, like I Soundgarden, absolutely. Chris Cornell, just fantastic songwriter. Obviously, there's not a thing there. You couldn't say enough about his voice. The guy had like a 5-octave range. He was unreal. To play rhythm guitar for him and maybe do a little harmony or something. Because if Chris Cornell's on the stage, you're not going to hear my voice at all. The guy was just so masterful, but and unfortunately, obviously, he's no longer with us.
Wow. So we touched on a little bit prior in the conversation here. When you get booked by a venue, do they pay you, or do you rely on tips from the audience?
So I do wind up negotiating a pay with the venue. And that is, one of those bigger differences when it comes to like doing, say, original music, doing covers. When you reach out to a venue to do covers, and you do covers, like you send them a lot of information so they can really kind of make an educated decision on whether they want to have you out. And in that, obviously you start negotiating kind of what your rate is, and kind of go from there on that end. And you, like I said, you are kind of more hired into, like, they want you obviously want to bring some people if you can and influence people to go there. And it's in a less of a direct way than say like, hey, I wrote this song, I'm playing here with my band, please come. And you're begging all your friends to come out like I did back in the metal days. So it is a little bit different on that end. So yeah, you wind up kind of negotiating that with the venue, at the time of booking. I do always have a tip bucket out, and I appreciate any time that winds up coming up. I mean, to me, tips aren't really like super important. I oftentimes just end up kind of spending them at the bar. Whether it be obviously, the few beers or so that I might have. I'm not a huge drinker, but like I'll, I have like a one beer per set kind of, personal rule. And even if like, it's a spot that has like a tab for me, because that can wind up happening at times too. I'll usually try to, do like a even split with the servers that are at the bar. Cause it is kind of one of those things where like, at least, some of that money that's going into my bucket probably could have went to like, servers. So I want to try to obviously, if I can, spread it around and whatnot.
That's awesome.
So
yeah. And I asked this question because I'm sure wasn't the only one in the beginning when I started going to live performances here in Delaware. I would see the tip bucket out, which I never mind doing that. But, I want people to know that you guys, all of you that are live musicians, and you're, one venue after another, you love what you do. You love playing for an audience. You may or may not be getting paid by the venue. We don't know. And so I just want people to know that, even if you are getting paid, it is okay to put something in that bucket for everybody, because everybody that you and everybody else that I've been to and go see, you just don't show up. You book it, practice, you travel, you're there for several hours, you've given up your time because you're doing something that you love, but then that takes you away from your family also. Every little bit helps. Absolutely. So I just want to clarify that for people.
Absolutely. A very salient point there. If you're wondering about like tipping me, at least personally, mind you, versus tipping a server, waiter, waitress, tip them. Don't tip me.
Thank you, because it's been a question, and I wasn't sure if I should or shouldn't. So I appreciate the answer. What's the best piece of advice another musician has ever given you?
It's a very cliche piece. It's not, the most profound, but I have a buddy named Ryan, who's a fantastic metal guitarist. He was in a band, at least. I'm not sure if they're still playing currently. Ryan's a great, fantastic guitarist, and works on guitars too. He works at Dana Sound Engineering in North Wilmington.
Oh wow!
He kind of, in that friendly way, kind of was pestering me during that when I was talking earlier about that 5-year period where I was kind of like not playing any music. During that time period, I wasn't singing for any kind of situation aside from in the car, in the shower kind of deal.
Right.
I was barely picking up any guitars. Had an acoustic, but and it was maybe like once every 6 months I'd maybe pick it up, play a few chords, and then put it back down again. Mainly because I missed being in a band, and so instead of doing the logical thing of playing, and
you just put it away.
I just didn't. So anytime, I went up like seeing Ryan out and around and stuff, he would always just kind of in that friendly way pester me like, "Hey, you playing any music lately? Playing any music lately? Playing any music lately?" And
that's a good friend.
Yeah. And it was honestly a push. And he just, he's like, "Dude, like no matter what, no matter how much you think you might suck at it, no matter how much you're screwing up the song, no matter how much you hate the riff you wrote, just keep doing it." It's that Finding Nemo Dory type of thing.
Exactly.
The musical equivalent of Just Keep Swimming. And really, like it goes for so many things, because like even when you there's kind of an old adage that like the show must go on. Obviously, right. We've all heard that. Right. And that kind of, like that is very true for like when you're up on stage and you're playing for people, and you just keep going, like you hit a couple bad notes or something, you just play through it. Your voice cracks on a high note, yet you just keep playing the song. You don't stop. And really that goes for, when you're off stage too. That goes for anytime you're in anything, musical or in any form of the art, it's just keep doing it.
And that's funny you should say that too, because that's the advice that a lot of I do the women entrepreneurs interviews, and that's the same thing too, is just keep moving forward, just keep working at it, just keep doing what you're doing, and eventually it just, like here you are, you're the solo artist of James West Acoustic. And so what is next for you?
This year I've been really kind of amping up a lot of the shows that I do, because I'm a part-time guy. I always kind of have like a deal with my family to like only play so many shows a month, and really so I'm getting married in October. And,
well, congratulations.
Thank you. My contribution to the wedding fund has been the money from the shows.
There you go.
As we discussed earlier, just from my fee from being booked by venues. And that all goes towards the wedding fund. We put like a little bit of a moratorium on our our family deal on how many shows I can take. And so I've just been, anytime there's been a show offered, I have the availability to play. I've been happy to jump on it, and so the next thing is getting married. And then next year, taking it a little bit slower on the show thing, really kind of going back to feeling like more like I'm a part-time player than say like, this year it's been like, ooh, I'm approaching almost that full-time status sometimes. Or at least, comparative to where it was,
Well, absolutely.
Yeah.
So before I go any further, where can people find you? How they get in contact with you?
On Facebook is probably the easiest way. You can find me under James West Acoustic. I also am on Instagram under J West Acoustic, but that's really. You can also find me on the website for TM Entertainment. So those are the spots where you can find me. I do also all of my show dates are up on there. I'm also on Bands in Town. If you search James West Acoustic, those are the spots where you can find me online. Outside of that, hopefully at venues that you go to.
At a venue at a venue near you.
Listen, any spot with cold beer and room for me to set up my equipment, I'm in.
You're there.
I'm happy to play.
So where are you going to be this weekend?
Actually, so this weekend I'm actually off. For our listeners, this would be July 19th. I will be at Sonora Restaurant in Newark, Delaware. And then the 21st and 22nd, I'll be at various Grain locations. So the 21st, I'll be at Grain on the Rocks in Lewis. And then on the 22nd, I'll be at the Grain on Main up in Newark.
Awesome. Yeah. And they can find your event page on your Facebook page.
Absolutely. Again, that's under James West Acoustic.
Okay. All right. Well, James, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for taking time out and talking with me about James West Acoustic.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been awesome. Before we go, can I give a couple shout outs though?
Absolutely.
Awesome. So, while I've been here very much shamelessly self-promoting, I do want to, give just a shout out to, for anyone listening, please check out some of my, favorite other cover artists in the area. There's some really great musicians. First to call out would be Twin Tides Acoustic, great duo from the Eastern Shore, Maryland area. AJ Love, he also plays a lot more around like the Northern Delaware area, like I do. Tim Jowden, probably one of the sweetest dudes I've ever met. When I said earlier about musicians having egos, I don't think that I don't think he ever developed the musician ego. He's just a pure sweet guy. All three names there, that fantastic musicians. There's some other really greats. There's AJ Jessen, who's fantastic. Like Nate Smythe, I almost forgot to mention Nate. Nate's fantastic. Does a great cover of Nutshell by Alice in Chains. But you were made mention earlier about musicians there. There's a lot of talent in this area. Everyone's so good.
Oh my gosh.
And listen, I'm honored to be like among them. Sometimes it makes me feel like I'm, a little bit of that imposter syndrome. For everyone that's listening, please check out, some of the other solo acoustic and duos in the area. Bill Triolo is another great one. I'm sorry. Please also check them out too. You can find links to them from my Facebook. Okay. Absolutely. The marriage of both there. Deb, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely.
If I'm rambling too long there on the shout outs.
No, this has been great. And just along with the shout outs to all the musicians, it's, find them, like them, comment, and share.
Yes, please.
Is my motto when I'm talking to the musicians. It goes a long way. It takes you less than a second to do, the like, the share, the comment, and everything else. So, but again, James, thank you. I really appreciate it. You can send me a list of those names and I will get them and post those names also. So again,
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you for listening to the R2RB podcast series. You can listen to the podcast on www.r2rb.com/podcast or on r2rb.buzzsprout.com. Are you a local musician that would like to be a guest on the R2RB podcast series? You can email us at info@r2rb.com. Have a suggestion for the next podcast interview? Send that to info@r2rb.com. Find us on Facebook at R2RB Broadcasting and on Instagram at R2RB. Until next time, keep the music playing.